All right, I've got good 49ers news, I've got bad 49ers news, and probably everything in between. This is a big update following a huge win over the Atlanta Falcons. San Francisco now at 5-2, but they are down one of their top pass rushers again, including their top existing pass rusher during the game on Sunday. That is Bryce Huff. He suffered a hamstring injury. Kyle Shanahan said that he's going to miss at most a couple games, but between Nick Bosa being out, Yetur Gross-Matos being out, and now Bryce Huff being out, the 49ers are down their top three pass rushers. I mean, it's brutal. Week after week, the 49ers, even despite the fact that they're winning most of these games, they're coming at a cost. And, I was just tweeting right before this injury update came out that the 49ers, they've already proven to be one of the deepest rosters in football, and people were questioning their depth. And I think that they've showcased that they have one of the best coaching staffs in football. To be 5-2, despite this absolute scourge of injuries, is wildly impressive, but now they're going to have to overcome even more. The 49ers' four healthy defensive ends at this point are as follows. And I want you to be able to take a look at the 49ers 90-man roster as we go through some of this stuff. I just put the 49ers article from yesterday up on the screen, so make sure you do check that up and that out. It is up on the San Francisco Standard, but we can move to the depth chart. It's going to be right here, and we could zoom in on the defensive end position just so you could visualize who the 49ers have left at this point. They're definitely going to have to make a move. They're active right now on the trade market, scouring that for whatever may be there. And whether or not this week's move is a stopgap move or a trade probably will just depend on what's available for the 49ers. It still is. I mean, we're on the anniversary of the Christian McCaffrey trade today, but that happened on the earlier end. The trade deadline is in a couple of weeks. It's on November 4th. The available defensive ends for the 49ers right now are Mykel Williams, Sam Okawanu, No Yetur Gross-Matos, Trevis Gipson, William Bradley King, and Robert Beal Jr. So you got 5 available defensive ends for San Francisco at this current moment. And two of those guys are on the practice squad. So that's where the 49ers are at this very moment. It's not a pretty sight at defensive end that already were struggling to rush the passer in situations where there was some leverage for the Atlanta Falcons yesterday. That meant when they were able to maintain the threat of a run game. By the end of the game, the 49ers had put the Atlanta Falcons into pass-heavy mode. And when they're in pass-heavy mode, San Francisco was able to pin their ears back, and they gave Michael Penix Jr. a lot of trouble. But a lot of the pin your ears back and get after the quarterback, a lot of the glory that the 49ers got through that came when Bryce Huff was roaring around the edge with one of the fastest get-offs in football. And now he comes out with a hamstring injury, so you're going to miss that. And you're going to be dealing with Mykel Williams on one side, who's been fantastic setting an edge against the run. A huge part of the accomplishment yesterday to hold Atlanta to the 3.1 yards per carry. He's been good at pushing the pocket from the inside, but I think the one area where Mykel still needs some development time is coming around the edge and winning one-on-one on the outside. And Bryce Huff has taken his game to a whole nother level, I think above even where he was with the New York Jets when he earned that $17 million contract that he's currently playing on right now, that the Philadelphia Eagles are paying the majority of. So you lose Huff and you've lost an A-list pass rusher. The way that he's been playing so far has been in the very, very top shelf of edge rushers this season. And he's been getting to the quarterback even without the help of Nick Bosa on the other side to take some defensive attention away. So this is tough news for the 49ers heading into a game against the Houston Texans. There is some good injury news, and I know that I started with the bad. It looks like Renardo Green got out of that game without a turf toe injury. He exited with a toe, and the 49ers had to take a look at the ligaments today and see exactly what was wrong. It is not turf toe. It is not that really tough toe ligament injury that Brock Purdy has. So Renardo Green, 49ers corner, might miss some time, but it doesn't look like it's going to be something that is lingering, just like turf toe. For Purdy, that currently remains an issue. And the 49ers might have bought themselves some more time for Brock Purdy's return with yet another win. I made the video from Washington Square a couple hours ago. $100,000 for each win that Mac Jones notches, taking at least 25% of the snaps. After 4 wins, and the fourth happened yesterday, the bonus vested. So he now has $400,000 in his bank account that he didn't have ahead of the game against the Atlanta Falcons. If Mac has to continue starting for the 49ers, it will be $100,000 per victory for him in terms of a bonus. And he has been more than fine for San Francisco. He has quite literally saved the season for the 49ers. And they may be relying on him moving forward even more, just because there is no reason to rush Brock Purdy back until he is closer to 100%. There had been a thought last week, and there even, I think it was a report from Diana Rossini over the weekend, that Brock Purdy was in line to return for the 49ers against the Houston Texans coming up in this week 8 game. But the 49ers are 5-2. And if you say that Purdy's 88, 89%, 90%, but not yet 95, 96, 97, or close to 100%, at 5-2, with Mac Jones playing the way that he is, orchestrating the system as effectively as he's orchestrating it, I feel that the 49ers just don't have ample incentive to try to push Brock Purdy out there. Now, it's going to continue, Shanahan said, along the same cadence as last week. We'll see Purdy at practice. We'll see if he's a little bit more involved in practice than last week. He seemed very limited last week, at least when we watched the drills and how the 49ers were allocating snaps there. We'll see if he's more involved this week. We'll get the clues as the 49ers approach their game against the Houston Texans. Going to take a look at a couple other pieces of injury news in this game. The 49ers could open the practice window for Spencer Burford this week. He's dealing with a knee issue, and he is on injured reserve as we currently speak. So let's open up the roster again and see some of the moves the 49ers might make. One thing I'm really curious about is Yetur Gross-Matos, who's dealing with a hamstring injury right now. But even if Yetur returns, he had been on a pitch count because of his knee issue, and he's an outside in player, so he's delivering at both defensive end and defensive tackle. But I wouldn't expect that pitch count to be lifted, especially now that he's coming back from another injury. And Shanahan didn't talk about him today, so I'm not sure if Yetur would even be in line to return. I just see this as a need for defensive end help now for San Francisco. Again, you've got Michael, you've got Sam Okawanu, who played his best career game yesterday, 5 pressures, got that sack, huge first sack when the 49ers ran that cage rush against the Michael Penix and the Falcons. It was the way that the 49ers had to operate against the good offensive line. They really constricted the pocket, and I thought that Sam Okawanu delivered a good game plan. Trevis Gibson just got promoted from the practice squad. He gave them 17 snaps, and then you've got your true depth guys on the practice squad in Robert Beal Jr. and William Bradley King. So you're now down Bosa, you're now down Bryce Huff, you're now down Yetur Gross-Matos. Given the fact that Sam Okawanu is just now starting to deliver multiple pressures a game and has just been almost a developmental guy forced into action for the 49ers early this year, and the fact that Michael Williams is a run-first defender, I think that the time is now. The 49ers really, really do need to get somebody in the building, or it's going to be tough sledding over the course of the next 2 weeks against the Houston Texans and the New York Giants. Both games played on turf. You definitely don't want to run players out there with lower body injuries like hamstrings, not like they would even on grass. But the 49ers are in desperation mode right now. And, Kyle Shanahan talked about this and the potential move for an edge rusher. The 49ers have been very open about the fact that they're scouring the market right now. They also have been very clear that they would very much prefer to have somebody who's under contract through more than 2025, through at least 2026. They don't want to make this a rental situation if they don't have to. But you know what 5-2 does? And you know what wide open NFL does? The combination of those two means that the 49ers are right in the thick of a title hunt right now because they've stacked enough wins and they owe it to their locker room to dedicate what they can to that title run. It means that maybe you do bend your rules and make an exception for a rental. And today, Kyle Shanahan essentially said no absolutes. Like somebody asked him, are you saying never to a rental this season? And he said, no, we can't say never to a rental. They obviously would prefer to have somebody under contract for beyond 2025, but sometimes it won't work out that way. And given this rising injury toll at such an important position, pass rusher coming in from the outside, I think the 49ers need to consider all options on the table. Now, I know that I've mentioned several times here over the course of the past couple of weeks, the New York Jets. They're down to 0-7. They have a lot of players that Robert Saleh is familiar with. They have an edge rusher named Jermaine Johnson, whom Robert Saleh really likes, who's under contract through 2026. I think that could be a very, very logical move for San Francisco as they try to augment what they have up front. Now, everybody has been talking about Trey Hendrickson. I get it. Unfortunately for the 49ers, the Bengals won on Thursday night. I will continue to maintain that the Bengals' belief in this season is foolish. I don't think they're a good team at all. I think the data supports that. I think the fact they've lost, 4 or 5 games also supports that. I think that was fool's gold on Thursday night with Joe Flacco against a decent Pittsburgh Steelers team, but not a great Pittsburgh Steelers team. Maybe the Bengals still change their minds if they lose 2 games before the trade deadline. But one of the problems there is the next game is against the Jets. And somebody's got to win that game. I guess there could be a tie between the Bengals and the Jets. But those are 2 teams that we've discussed as potential sellers to the 49ers. I think if the Bengals lose to the Jets, they would be absolute idiots not to consider selling, especially somebody like Trey Hendrickson, who has already literally refused to sign a long-term deal with them. So would you rather get something or would you rather get nothing in a lost season for Trey Hendrickson? And the 49ers are very, very interested in Trey Hendrickson. But, you know, if the Jets do beat the Bengals and the Bengals don't want to sell, if they continue to be stubborn regarding Trey Hendrickson, do the Jets look at this as, oh my, we're finally turning things around, first-year coach, we don't want to sell players, we want to make sure that we continue building around guys, especially guys who are already under contract through at least 2026, and maybe they wouldn't be willing to part ways with Jermaine Johnson. I'm not sure. I don't know exactly where any of these teams are. I just think that it might be wise for both the Bengals and the Jets to be offering up players that can help teams now in exchange for future draft capital. And the 49ers are obviously on the buyer's end of things at 5-2 moving forward. All we can dictate right now, all that we can really evaluate right now is supply and demand. And the 49ers right now are short in supply of edge rushers after this Bryce Huff injury. So they should be high in demand of edge rushers after this Bryce Huff injury. And we can see where the rest of the chips fall in that regard. I talked about Renardo Green. Let's go to the cornerback position right now. We can add him to the injury shading for San Francisco. Here's Renardo. Both him and Upton Stout are hurt. Now, Chase Lucas was awesome yesterday in place of Upton Stout, who got hurt in practice last week, an ankle injury. Chase Lucas filled in for him. And I did the interview with Chase Lucas. I think that we've got to play that, right? I think that I have that here. Talked to Chase yesterday in the locker room. The way that he pounced on that football on the 4th and 1 when Michael Penix threw to Drake London was absolutely special. So here we go. We've got Chase Lucas talking about the, let's say, the biggest defensive play of the game for the 49ers on 4th down and 1. The Vegas preseason game, you talked a lot about the indicator tape.
Yeah.
When you had the interception there.
Yep.
How big of a file is that? How many plays do they give you every week to study?
I remember when the Vegas game, I told you it was like 130 something.
Mm-hmm.
This one was probably like around 80. But it's just things that they don't want to say this is 100%, but just keep looking at it. Yeah. So, when I just kept looking at it, I'm just like, man, every time he's at 2, man, he's running the option route. Like, he's always outside. So when I got it, when I seen the motion over, I'm like, oh wow, they're really about to run this on 4th and 1 or 4th and 2. And I'm just mad that I missed the opportunity to pick it off, but I'm glad I got to play to win the game. So
there was a lot of.
Yeah, he was mad at himself for not housing that pick six. And that also would have broken the 49ers interception streak or drought, I guess. It's a streak without an interception. 14 games, longest in NFL history at this point. Anyway, as long as Upton Stout needs to recover to get back to 100%, he can have it because Chase Lucas he's a vet. And he's somebody who's fought through the fire through scout team anonymity to make an impact. And when you just listen to how religiously he watches some of this indicator tape, over and over again to get the clues and then act on it instinctively, but instinctively with the knowledge of tendencies from the opposing offense. When you just observe how hard Chase Lucas studies, and then you combine that with the fact that he's got experience on both sides of the ball from his work on the 49ers scout team, it's somebody they can really trust on the back end. And it's one of the reasons why they have one of the deepest rosters in the entire NFL. If Renardo Green is out for any extended period of time with his toe injury, which by the way is not turf toe, then Darrell Luter Jr. played some good football in his stead yesterday. There were a couple of downfield breakdowns in coverage. I thought one of them might have been Darrell Luter Jr.'s fault. But again, you've got to have a doctorate in coverage to know exactly what some of the assignments are. That's why I don't jump on individual guys by acting like I know everything about what they're supposed to do on any given play, because I could be wrong about that. And I know a lot of people like to jump on individual players because they have to be quick to point fingers and blame, but then they end up wrong and they end up looking foolish and they end up painting an incorrect picture of the team. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say what I know and give you guys the unbiased, fair view of things. Luter was in on the coverage of a couple explosive plays that went in Atlanta's favor. I'm just not sure if it was his fault or if it was the safety's fault. The one I was talking about specifically here was down the sideline before the intentional grounding penalty at the end of the first half when Jair Brown was bringing the safety help. Regardless of those plays, Darrell Luter Jr. was really good in run support yesterday. And the 49ers only gave up 3.1 per carry to a team that just ran all over the Buffalo Bills 6 days prior to that. So Luter's been a really nice cornerback 3 for the 49ers this year. And I think one of his biggest contributions has been that run defense. And the 49ers might have to see a little bit more of him moving forward over the course of the next couple of weeks. They have what it takes, I think, in the secondary to hold down the fort despite these two injuries. I just don't know, if you push the limit, if you try to find the edge for a prolonged period of time, at a certain point, you are going to tumble over the edge. And I guess we're literally speaking about the edge right now because we're talking about the defensive end position. But Nick Bosa's out. Yetur Gross-Matos has been out. And now Bryce Huff is going to miss at least 2 weeks. How much is too much for the 49ers to overcome? Because the pass rush has already been leaking some oil for the 49ers. And it's been a Herculean effort just to get this defense into a playable position. And you got to give Robert Saleh credit. You got to give the entire unit credit for how it's been swarming to the football. They've been scheming up a pass rush. They've been opportunistic at certain spots. But even then, they've just had a straight up win in certain areas to get to these victories on the field. And Bryce Huff has been a winner for the 49ers in one-on-one situations, and they're not going to have him anymore for at least 2 games. So I just don't know how much is too much for the 49ers to overcome. And that's not taking anything away from the great game that Sam Okawanu put on tape for San Francisco. It's not taking anything away from what Michael Williams has been able to do. And maybe they can get something out of one of the practice squad guys, Robert Beal Jr. or William Bradley King, in this next game against the Houston Texans and after that at New York. But it just seems to me that they need to make a move, and they need to make it now. And they owe it to the locker room to keep this pass rush going, because this defense was playing its ass off yesterday. Obviously, the offense was doing its job for the 49ers as well. And it's already a wild test case of resilience that the 49ers are putting up there. And I know that it just seems to snowball, and they seem to need to show more of it on a weekly basis. But you've come this far. You're not going to turn around. You've been this damn tough overcoming as much as you've overcome up to this point, keep on trucking on. And probably good news for the 49ers that trade deadline is looming in 2 weeks, because that might start to spur some action. And I think they're going to need some action to make sure that they keep this thing cobbled together. On the offensive side of the ball, I mentioned that Spencer Burford's window might open up. He's been tending to a knee issue. Burford is a swing tackle for the 49ers, but he could also play guard for San Francisco. And they're at a spot right now at the guard position where Connor Colby has struggled. George Kittle straight up called out Connor Colby's NFL conditioning habits yesterday. That was a great example of veteran leadership on the team. He did it in the press conference. He said he was talking to Connor Colby about it in the locker room right before. But the 49ers are in a position where maybe Ben Bartch is back this week. Maybe it's not till the week after. He's coming back from a high ankle sprain. They were counting on having a veteran guard at this left guard position. They haven't had that for several weeks at this point. It has been an issue, especially in pass protection. Colby did help drag Christian McCaffrey across the goal line yesterday. That's great and all, but the 49ers won't, I don't think, always be able to run the football, run power as effectively as they did against the Falcons. So the pass protection is going to have to be better, and they're going to have to take a step up when it comes to straight drop pass protection along that offensive line. So long story short, Spencer Burford's return could help the 49ers in a number of ways. I know that he primarily plays tackle now for San Francisco, but he can help that depth at guard. And another veteran whom they're waiting on right now, who's on injured reserve, is Ben Bartch. Jake Brendel's going to miss at least a couple of weeks with the hamstring injury. Matt Hennessy played well in his stead yesterday. And that's where we need to talk about the fact that the 49ers just ran a crap load of power yesterday. I mean, this was a big philosophical shift that we saw from the 49ers. Kyle Shanahan on the conference call just a few minutes ago tried to downplay this, but I don't think you could downplay what we saw on that field from the 49ers yesterday. I mean, this was the best quote came from Kyle Juszczyk on this, and I want to get this up on the screen for you guys. That's the roster. That's not what we need. We have a really good diagram of what the 49ers were doing offensively yesterday. Here it is. I know I included this in one of the original videos, but I'm going to include it in this one too. They kept a couple outside zone runs in there, but not many. They just straight up abused the middle of the field, running in between the hashes yesterday. They took out a lot of the outside zone plays and added some gap schemes, some true power running, simplified things to go straight against the defense that blitzes a lot, because you want to make sure that you could burn those blitzes. And to burn a blitz, you don't run laterally. To burn a blitz, you run straight into the underbelly of the defense. But to do that, you've got to be physical. Kyle Juszczyk said that he had a few more bruises after this game than he typically does. And you've just got to be ready to big boy the opposing defense. And that's exactly what the 49ers did. They actually took this game out of the hands of their perimeter blockers, their receivers, who have not been blocking as well this season versus other years for obvious reasons. There have been personnel deficiencies there. George Kittle was back, which helped, but they even had George Kittle looping around to the inside. Did you guys see that one interior McCaffrey run where he just blew up Christian Ellis, the Atlanta linebacker? I mean, Kittle was taking out guys on the inside today in this game on Sunday more often than he was stretching out to the outside. And he's really, really good at both. But the punishment that the 49ers were delivering yesterday was the truly power rushing, gap scheme, blue collar type. And I just find this chart right here, this diagram of where the 49ers were going with the football, to be very, very indicative of the shift. Normally, you're going to see lines sprouting out to the outside every which way. You're not going to see the vast majority of stuff moving to the middle. And then it's absolutely no surprise that they had a productive run. Like this green line to the left. This was Christian McCaffrey on an outside zone play that picked up about 12 or 13 yards that came after several of these inside runs, because they created space to the outside based on how they were just absolutely pulverizing the inside. What we're seeing right now is defense is so keyed on the 49ers outside zone game, combined with the fact that the 49ers are just not blocking as well to the perimeter because of personnel losses, because of teams not having to respect the downfield threat as much, with the 49ers not being as stocked as they've typically been at receiver. The 49ers needed to change gears. They needed to start zagging where they had been zigging in the past. And that's what you saw yesterday. That's what you saw with this power game yesterday. And I think it caught Atlanta off guard. And I think it set up a lot of counters to the outside now for the 49ers. And I think the NFL season is a perpetual chess match. And I think that this game plan yesterday, rushing wise, Christian McCaffrey, 109 of his 129 yards were in between the tackles. That was the third highest amount of his career. I think that's going to set the table for San Francisco to start running outside zone with a little bit more movement. I said that I was talking to Mac Jones yesterday after the game. He told me that George Kittle's presence was creating 3 yards of space on the field because there was so much respect for where George Kittle might run on a pass pattern that defenses were backing off, that it was just changing the entire geometric dynamic of the field. And boom, all of a sudden the 49ers were running the football. I mean, it really felt like they didn't just win one game last night because they got that run game resurrected and because they went to a great extreme, as you can see here, to do it. Felt like the 49ers won multiple games last night. It felt like a long-term victory for this team as they tried to build that foundation of the run game that hadn't been there for the past, 5 games. It really hadn't been there in week 1 either. They only rushed for about 3 yards a carry against Seattle, but they were over 100 yards. They did run enough against the Seattle Seahawks to maintain some offensive stability. But again, they had attempted the most passes in football, and their quarterbacks had the most injuries in football through 6 weeks. Those two numbers were correlated because the more you drop back, the more exposed you are. The 49ers had to build a more sustainable offensive base. And yesterday was a massive, massive win for them because they did just that in this game against the Atlanta Falcons. Jordan Schultz reports that teams are keeping a close eye on Miami edge rushers Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, and Matthew Judon, with the Dolphins at 1-6. So while I talk about Jermaine Johnson of the New York Jets, while we talk about Trey Hendrickson and the Bengals, who have been in this weird spot over the course of the season, I don't think that we can forget about what's happening in Miami with things not going well there and the Dolphins at 1-6. A couple weeks ago, I said we need to let most of October play out because we need to see who can actually turn around their early season struggles, who won't, who's going to firmly be a seller heading into this trade deadline. I think we're starting to get a lot more clarity. So Judon, Phillips, Chubb of the Dolphins, 1-6 makes a whole lot of sense. You go over to the Jets, 0-7. Jermaine Johnson on that football team is somebody who's under contract through 2026. Can't neglect him. And then, I still think that the Cincinnati Bengals should be in sell mode, but I don't think they themselves realize it. And we can watch that Cincinnati New York Jets game really closely coming up this weekend. Couple really interesting things snap count wise for the 49ers. And I'm going to be getting into the grades for San Francisco over the course of the next. Lombardi herself reports. This is an update from Lombardi herself. Successful target run in lift, headed back to the apartment. 3:50 p.m. ETA. That's the update. Nothing to do with the 49ers. Lombardi herself, she turned down tickets to the game yesterday. Isn't that crazy? She didn't want to go all the way to Santa Clara, but she watched on the big screen at home. And she also, we could say, she turned down social plans because she didn't want to go socializing with a bunch of girls who wouldn't care enough about the game to take her attention off the game. So she was absolutely locked in on the big screen TV yesterday, watching the 49ers and the Falcons. We can applaud Lombardi herself, who's just made the successful target run. Anyway, let's get to the snap counts that I thought were very interested for the 49ers in this game. Mike has got an outside zone power breakdown for us too that we're going to get to in a second. But I first want to talk about the 49ers 4 safety rotation. Highly, highly unusual to see a team play 4 safeties in a game without injuries. 49ers did that, though. This was probably the last game that Malik Mustafa is not going to get a full snap load for the 49ers. Malik did not play until the second quarter, essentially, of the game against the Falcons. A lot of fans asking me why he's the 49ers' best safety. Well, because he's coming off the ACL tear. 49ers want to make sure that he gets back into shape. And they also wanted to make sure that they would have him for crunch time of the game. So they didn't play him at the start. Jair Brown and Marquise Siegel started for the 49ers. But even though Siegel started, he had the fewest snaps out of any safety. He had 20 snaps in this game. Jason Pinnock, who was the big nickel, who didn't play on defense the week before against Tampa Bay, had more than Siegel, who started in each of the past 2 weeks. So 23 for Jason Pinnock, 20 for Siegel, and about 40 for Malik Mustafa. They're hoping to get him up to the 50 to 60 range or the 100% of the snap load range next week against the Houston Texans. He's going to be the one starter for the 49ers that is locked into his role at safety. And I think when he came into the game yesterday, the 49ers defense clearly improved. They need better safety play than they've had over the first few weeks. Then the question is, who's going to be that second starter? Kyle Shanahan just complimented Jair Brown. He thought that he was good. I think that Jair is actually on track to be that second starter, whereas somebody like Jason Pinnock is on track to be the big nickel. They were also happy with his performance in that role yesterday. I do think that barring an injury, the odd man out right now is Marquise Siegel, and it's no coincidence that he had the lowest snap count at 20 yesterday. Again, he's been the most picked on safety in the entire NFL. He had given up over 400 yards through the air entering this game. And Siegel was only targeted once yesterday, but he also only played 20 snaps. It was by far his lowest snap count of the entire season. So I'm going to get more into this once I submit my grades for the San Francisco Standard. For now, you can read the Badge of Honor article from yesterday, which talks about the 49ers' increased use of the power run game. And I think Mike has some numbers for us. Yep, the 49ers went to outside. Well, Mike, this is week 6. This was week 7 yesterday. I'm not sure if I trust these numbers. Is this week? Yeah, Mike sent me some numbers, but it only goes week 1 through 6, and that was week 7. So going to have to revisit those in a bit. But in week 1 through 6, the 49ers ran much more outside zone than they. We don't have week 7 data yet. That makes sense. Okay, thanks, Mike. Happy birthday to Mike, by the way. It's Mike's birthday. Maybe Mike wants to make a cameo. If you can make a cameo, you could let me know, Mike. You could get up on the show. Everybody could tell you happy birthday. We don't have week 7 data yet, but the 49ers were running a whole heck of a lot more outside zone than power over the course of the first 6 weeks. In fact, the most power that they ran was in week 6 at Tampa. They ran 5 plays, which were power run plays, gap scheme power. A max of 1 in week 4 and 5, and then 0 power runs weeks 1 through 3. I think what the 49ers have been figuring out is that outside zone requires perimeter players to block really well on top of offensive linemen, and they haven't been getting quality perimeter blocking, especially with George Kittle having missed most of this season so far. So they decided to, especially yesterday, but it's already started to be a trend over the course of the past couple of weeks. The 49ers have really decided to start just focusing on the interior, focusing on isolating their offensive linemen, having those guys do the blocking, and you take some of the receivers out of the equation. It's not what Kyle Shanahan prefers, but it's what's been necessary given how defenses are playing the 49ers and the personnel that San Francisco has to see necessary success on the ground. We got a Monday Night Football doubleheader tonight. I'm super excited for this one. The first one is Texans again. The first one is the Buccaneers against the Lions. That's a heavyweight matchup in the NFC. Second one, Texans and Seahawks, 4 p.m., 7 p.m. So that's a game featuring an NFC West team, and it also features the 49ers' next opponent, the Houston Texans, who are coming into this game at 2-3. 49ers are going to play them on the road Sunday. The Seattle Seahawks host this one, so it's a massive day in the city of Seattle. because they have game 7. I think that one's in Toronto, though, but I know that a lot of Seattle people are going to be watching the Mariners play the Blue Jays. That starts at 5, and then at 7 o'clock, probably ending after the baseball game, unless the baseball game is a crazy extra innings affair. The Seahawks are going to play the Texans, and 49ers fans are going to have a chance to cheer for their division rival to lose while simultaneously getting a scouting report on their next opponent. So I went through the snap counts for the safety position. And now I want to go through some of the snap divisions for the 49ers along both lines. Alfred Collins had 39 snaps. He was the most used 49ers defensive tackle. That is a massive, massive development because Alfred Collins at the start of this season, we were talking about him potentially being inactive week 1 since he was down on that pecking order. But the 49ers have believed that with time, he would evolve into a stalwart. And that's exactly what's happening in front of our eyes. He was getting big time push for the 49ers. They do not hold Atlanta to 3.1 yards per carry without good defensive tackle play. Alfred Collins up to 40 snaps, massive. Kevin Givens back for the 49ers, also huge. Right now, CJ West is firmly in developmental mode. He only had 9 snaps for the 49ers. So much bigger load on those 2 guys for the 49ers up front. You also had Kalia Davis mix in and give the 49ers some good reps as well. Jordan Elliott remains one of the starters, and I thought that his push early in this game set a great, great tone. He was working against Bretterson, one of the guards for the Atlanta Falcons, and it was second down, second play of the game. Pushed him right back into the lap of Michael Penix, who had to roll out, throw the ball away. Whenever the 49ers were able to make Penix uncomfortable in this game yesterday, they saw a lot of defensive success. I'm going to bust out the splits, pressured and non-pressured for Michael Penix, and I think that they're going to be markedly different. So, yeah, Michael Penix, when he was kept clean yesterday, was 18 of 25 for 180 yards, 7.2 yards per attempt, and a quarterback rating of 105.4. When he was pressured yesterday, he was 3 of 13 for 61 yards and a rating of 48.6. Yards per attempt down to 4.7. 7.2 versus 4.7 yards per attempt. 105.4 rating to 46.6 rating. Whenever the 49ers were able to pressure him, the game completely changed. Now, the trouble was getting some of that pressure, but they were able to stop the run, pin their ears back, and rush. But now I bring it back to the top of the show where we point out that Bryce Huff is out for 2 weeks. And how are the 49ers going to get the type of pass rush that made Michael Penix Jr. so uncomfortable? They've got C.J. Stroud next, then they have Jackson Dart kind of after that. I know that Stroud has had his struggles this year, and they date back to last season. I know that Jackson Dart's a rookie. Both of those guys are going to pick you apart if you can't pressure them. I mean, they're both NFL quarterbacks. So I don't care about struggles or inexperience. If the 49ers cannot get to either of the next 2 QBs, and you could forget about Matthew Stafford in 3 weeks, the 49ers hope that Bryce Huff is certainly back by then. I would hope that they have a trade reinforcement by then. But it doesn't matter who you play in this league if you can't generate pressure, and that is a massive concern for the 49ers right now with this Bryce Huff trade, because it was already a big concern even when he was in there yesterday. If you can't generate pressure, you're going to run out of smoke and mirrors to execute on the back end. So that's the first thing that the 49ers have to get to. I will say, though, those pressure splits yesterday for Michael Penix Jr. marked, and I think that you saw it when you're watching the game yesterday. When he was playing 7-on-7 ball, the 49ers had no chance. When they found a way to get to him, and they could thank their run defense for that because they were able to focus with reckless abandon on getting to the quarterback, that's when they saw, as a defense, a lot of success in this game last night. Mike, happy birthday to him. Unfortunately, he cannot join us at the moment live. Maybe we'll do another show here either later tonight or tomorrow where Mike can join us live and everybody can wish him happy birthday. I'm going to move to a Q&A right now. I am going to answer any good questions that I do happen to see. We're leading this up until the start of Monday Night Football between the Bucs and the Detroit Lions. You should be worried about every single NFL opponent. You're saying that the Giants are 2-5. They walked in there to Denver yesterday and had a big lead in the fourth quarter. And they also shutting down the Broncos offense through 3 quarters. I know they collapsed at the very end, but the league is a tough place, man. You cannot underestimate a single opponent. I mean, they whipped the Philadelphia Eagles. The New York Giants did not all too long ago. So I think that every opponent deserves respect in this league. You know, why don't we take a look at the team tier chart updated after yesterday's games? Because the 49ers, they're 5-2, but they are not in a position where arrogance is a viable option. And to help you understand that, I could open this up and show you the exact landscape around the league. I find it funny that the 49ers, and I find it fitting that the 49ers are at the very origin of this graph, right in the very middle of it. That means that they've been average offensively and average defensively throughout the course of this year. Now, ever since Eddie Pinheiro came aboard in week 2, they've been above average on special teams, and that's been a great differentiator for the 49ers. But if you look at the next couple of games, the Houston Texans are a tier above San Francisco. Houston's had the second most efficient defense in all football under DeMeco Ryans. Look, they're way up here. Defense is y-axis. The offense has been a little less efficient than San Francisco's, even though they've had more players available. So yes, 49ers probably better on that side of the ball, but this is a good Houston defense. The Rams also a good offense. I mean, the Rams, who are coming in now 3 weeks from now to Levi's, it looks like they've been the closest thing to an elite team in this league. Well above average defensively, significantly above average offensively. The special teams, though, has been the thorn in the Rams side. So there's nobody who's been dominant in 3 phases of the game. And I know that's rare, but it seems impossible now in the modern NFL with the salary cap really, really taking hold and creating the parity that we've seen. So the 49ers are here. They just beat another team that is in their tier in the Atlanta Falcons. They're going to try to beat a team in the next tier next week in the Houston Texans. The New York Giants are down here. It's not like they're in a laughable position on this graph. They've got an offense that's been just about as efficient as San Francisco's and a defense that's been worse, but it's not the laughing stock of the league. Those defenses are down here. 49ers have to take their next opponents very, very seriously. And in that Rams game, that looms as one where LA probably is going to be favored over the 49ers again. You know, I think when we talk about Brock Purdy and his potential return, the 49ers should target all fire on Brock Purdy being as healthy as possible for that Rams game, which is coming up in week 10, which has also been floated around as a potential Brandon Ayuk return date. But that, again, that hasn't been firmly put out there. That was just Kyle Shanahan casually discussing a target, an informal target date that the 49ers had been floating around over the course of the past several weeks or maybe even the past several months. Anyway, that's what the tier chart looks like. And I think that should help people not be arrogant about any upcoming opponent on the 49ers schedule. All roads lead through Tampa Bay. Baker Mayfield playing really good football. It's unbelievable that the 49ers were still in that game despite all that happened. I mean, they were down a huge amount of players entering the game, and then they lost Fred Warner, and they were still in that game in the fourth quarter. The 49ers remain a very, very tough team to beat. Outcast says, I believe they said Purdy will be back unless something changed. Well, what changed is the 49ers won another game. So we know that this Brock Purdy situation is delicate. We know that the toe injury is very tricky. We know that we have to look at this on a week-by-week basis. If you are looking at this with the changing of tides as things evolve over the course of the season, you pay attention to where the 49ers are record-wise, and you look at the fact that they're 5-2. You see the Rams game looming in early November. You say, okay, this team is going to need an elite offense to reach the ultimate goal. You say that Brock Purdy can deliver that, but only Brock Purdy at close to 100% is going to be able to deliver that, because otherwise you can get on this treadmill of turf toe reversions. We saw it happen already once against Jacksonville. So you say, where's the first game where Brock Purdy and that elite offensive efficiency might be needed to legitimately get the 49ers a win? That probably is going to be that Rams game coming up in November. So then you say, okay, how do we make sure that Brock Purdy is available at full health or close to it by then? Maybe it's sitting him until that game. Then you say, do we have the luxury of doing that? If the 49ers had lost to the Falcons, I would say, no, they don't have the luxury of doing that. They need to find a way to win against the Houston Texans and the New York Giants. They might have the luxury of continuing to send Mac Jones out there if Purdy is not close enough to 100% yet. That's why this is truly a fluid day-to-day, week-to-week situation. And with every victory, the 49ers stash some money into the bank, and they're in a position where they have a little bit more breathing room as far as Brock Purdy goes. I mean, it's a great example of why you need two quarterbacks to get through the marathon in this league. No, the 49ers did not have cap insurance on Fred Warner. They did for Nick Bosa. No cap savings due to the Fred Warner injury. No insurance policy on that one. Do I realize that every Ram win in the AFC is in the AFC? They're 0-1 in the NFC in the division. That is important. Yeah, well, I mean, I talk about how important it is that the 49ers have already beaten every single one of the NFC West opponents. They have a bunch of tiebreakers right now thanks to their NFC West schedule and their NFC record. But I also realize that the Rams are going to play everybody in the NFC West again, or at least for the first time, because they haven't had those opportunities yet in this 2025 season. And there's a good chance the Rams win those games because the Rams are good this year. So the 49ers win down in LA was absolutely massive, but it's still really, really early in this entire process. And the Rams are going to have a chance to take a bite out of this NFC West. And the 49ers need to target a lot of fire at that Rams game in early November. It is going to be a massive, massive showdown at Levi's Stadium. The Rams are 0-2 in NFC, yes. That means they've got a lot of NFC games coming up, and they've got a lot of NFC West games coming up, including the showdown against the 49ers. This is just speculation. A lot of talk is about Hendrickson not playing because they want to trade him. Do I think there's any truth to that? No. Unfortunately, I don't think Cincinnati's smart enough for that. I think they've been making a gross miscalculation regarding Trey Hendrickson. First, holding him hostage with the contract situation where they couldn't get him to a long-term deal because they weren't offering him enough money. They weren't willing to pay him top of the market, and Trey Hendrickson is a player who's produced at the top of the market. So they got him back for the year, satisfied at least for the time being. But the chances that they're able to ink him beyond this season don't seem to be very good, and the chances that they do anything productive on the field this season seem even worse. So if I was Cincinnati, I would have traded Trey Hendrickson yesterday, because every single week that you trade him, you save $1 million. That's what you're paying him in base salary. But Cincinnati has not been known to make the shrewdest personnel moves, and I think that they continue to slide into a mistake on that end. John says, do you think that Hennessy is more fierce, more of a fighter, tougher, and bigger than Brendel? He's bigger than Brendel. You know, this is something I was thinking about. The 49ers ran a ton more inside stuff yesterday, a ton more power. Hennessy was pushing Christian McCaffrey into the end zone on that just very inspirational touchdown run. Brendel, coming out of college at UCLA, was one of the most athletic center prospects ever, but he was slightly undersized. He was lighter. But he's not like this macho man in the middle. Brendel is really good for the outside zone, and his movement capability has been excellent for the 49ers at center, but his weakness has come mano a mano up front when the 49ers have needed a lot of muscle to either anchor or just get that push in the middle on the interior run. So one could make the argument that the move to Hennessy, because the Brendel hamstring injury yesterday, actually fit the game plan better for San Francisco, because I do think that Hennessy mauled yesterday. I thought that he played a very good game. So it could just be that this change happened at the right time for San Francisco, given the game plan against the Falcons. Now, they're not going to abandon the outside zone. Now they have a counter, right? It was a counter punch for the 49ers, and the Falcons were destabilized by it. And now other teams who play the 49ers are going to see that the 49ers are able to successfully run power to the inside. That's going to set up a lot of outside runs. And I think that Matt Hennessy is going to be tested in that way. Can he deliver on the outside zone? Can he deliver some of the reach blocks that the 49ers are going to really demand of a center when they're running more to the perimeter? And that's going to be a new indicator of where Matt Hennessy is at as a center, because what he put on tape yesterday was really, really impressive. But the 49ers were going with a lot of gap scheme inside runs. Is Juice quietly having another great season and people just aren't noticing it? He was really good yesterday. I think they need to throw the ball to Kyle Juszczyk a little bit more. Kyle Juszczyk is one of the most stable commodities there is in football. He's going to be the same guy year in and year out. And what he does is so valuable, so irreplaceable to this offense that, yeah, people don't notice it because they just read box scores too much. They play too much fantasy football. They're not appreciating what happens away from the ball, and Kyle Juszczyk is a massive, massive part of that. Do I think the 49ers should trade for 2 mediocre edge rushers or 1 good one? I don't think they should trade for anybody who's mediocre. I think you need to trade for somebody who, at the very least, has developmental potential under Chris Kasarik. In 2021, they traded for Charles Omenihu, and by the end of that season, in the playoffs against Dallas, he was obliterating Tyron Smith, who was one of the better left tackles in the game back in 2021. So, when the 49ers traded for Omenihu, I think a casual observer might say this is a mediocre player. He just wasn't in the right situation. So they've got to trade for somebody, even if it's somebody without a lot of production under their belts. They got to trade for somebody who they believe can deliver for them in their system and could deliver big, big production for them in their system. Charles Omenihu did it. 49ers could look for a diamond in the rough like that moving forward. But to more fully answer your question, yes, maybe there is a situation, maybe there is a spot where the 49ers have the ability to trade for 2 players, and that can help some of the depth issues along the defensive line because they have lost a lot due to injury at that position. But you never need mediocre pass rushers. You try to find bargains. That doesn't mean that you're looking for mediocrity. We're going to take a moment to hear from our sponsor on this show, Bubs. Aging sucks, but it doesn't have to. That's where Bubs Naturals collagen peptides come in. Starting in your mid-20s, your body naturally produces less collagen every single year. And collagen is the protein that holds everything together. It's literally the glue of your body. With Bubs, you can restore collagen levels closer to what your body naturally had in its youth. That means stronger joints, healthier hair and nails, smoother skin, and faster recovery. Here's what makes Bubs truly different. The brand is a tribute to former Navy SEAL Glenn Bub Doherty, a national hero who gave his life saving Americans in Benghazi, Libya. Glenn's call sign was Bub, and he was the kind of guy who always pushed for self-improvement and helped everyone around him. That DNA is woven into the Bubs brand. And to honor him, Bubs donates 10% of all profits to charity, starting with the Glenn Doherty Memorial Foundation. Live better longer. For a limited time only, our listeners are getting 20% off at Bubs Naturals by using the code Lombardi at checkout. Just head to bubsnaturals.com. That's BUBS naturals.com and use the code Lombardi and you're all set. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them our show sent you. Bubs, thank you for supporting the show. All right, it's Monday Night Football time. Everybody, thanks for watching. Make sure that you do check out the article on the San Francisco Standard I need to get that up on the screen. That's the team tier chart. That's not exactly what you're looking for. This is the one that we are looking for. The article about the 49ers power run game and how that win was more than just one win. It was a big long-term victory for the 49ers, and it happened over the Atlanta Falcons. Article is linked up in the description. We're going to pin it to the comment section. Go sign up for the Standard. That would be very helpful. Grades coming up also on the San Francisco Standard. Huge win for the 49ers. We've covered this every which way, and we're going to continue doing so moving forward. Enjoy both of the games tonight. Big night of sports in the U.S., and you could get a scouting report on the 49ers' next opponent, the Houston Texans. Thanks for watching.